everyone. This video is kind of an update or an addendum to the Fama French three-factor model that I put out online, and some of you have already seen. That video goes through a lot of the background of the Fama French three-factor model that we've covered in class. And I also wanted, and so you could skip that if you wanted to, or maybe you would like more clarification than when I went over in class, and that would be a fine video to watch for that. I've decided to make a second video so that I can show you actually where the Fama French three-factor model data comes from, so you can see where to download that from in the future. So what I'm going to do now is start off by just going out to the the Kenneth French website, and you can do this just by looking Google for Kenneth French. And you go out to his data library. It says U.S. research returns. The top three are the ones that we're interested in, the Fama French three-factor models, and it doesn't say here, but these are the monthly returns that he calculates and puts out online. If you wanted to calculate these on a weekly basis, your regression coefficients that we'll use in the model, you can download this set of data. And then finally, the last one is the daily data that you might be interested in using sometime. But for our purposes, I'm going to use 5 years of monthly data. So I've downloaded the top one that's going to give me the monthly data. And it's actually going to show up as a text file. I'm going to save this. So you can see you're not very useful for us in that format. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, close it out, open it back up in Excel, and I need to make a few modifications to it so it's useful for us. So I'll go to File, Open. I'm at Equity Valuation. Here it is. Just going through the steps there. If you remember in class, we had three different risk factors. The market risk factor, which is the market return minus the risk-free rate, the size factor, small minus big, and the value factor, high book-to-market value minus low book-to-market value firms. And then they've also included the monthly risk-free rate in the last column, and we'll need that for our regression. I'm going to take out the top three lines here, and notice the dates. We start in ascending order from July 1926. We're going to need to reverse that, but first, if you scroll all the way down, or most of the way down, they've actually calculated the annual returns too, and we don't need those, so I'm going to take those out. But those are kind of somewhat interested in looking at if you want to look at those at a later time. I have to make one more adjustment to the data because we want 2.65%, not 2.65. So what I'm going to do is divide each of these by 100. Go to Pay Special, go to Values, and then I can make it look nice. And by the way, when you see the cells jump over like that, I'm holding down Control and Shift and using the arrow keys to do that. So again, right now what I'm doing is pressing Control and Shift, the right arrow, and then I can press the down arrow. It's going to highlight all my data there. Check percentages, pull it out to do decimal places, and now we have a very nice looking spreadsheet. I'm going to go ahead and save this so I don't lose it. I'm going to use my company today that I'm using for class, Cracker Barrel. I'm going to calculate the Fama French three-factor model for that company. So that's going to go. That's why I'm naming the file this. I need to save this as an Excel workbook. Alright, so I have this data. Now I need to change the order of the years or the dates. So we start with the most recent month first. Alright, and what this represents is actually the return for the prior month. So this is December 2012. This would be the return from the end of, November 1st through December 1st, 2012. So our data is a couple of months old, but that's fine. We can live with that. The next thing I need to do is go out and download the data for Cracker Barrel. Excuse me. So cbrl. I'm going to use historical prices. Got to download this to the spreadsheet. Hopefully it'll open up. Here we go. So, oh, I made a mistake there. Let me go back and fix that. I didn't put the right time down. I need to go back up here, put down the start date being December 1st, 2008, and ending December 1st. It should be 2007, ending December 1st, 2012. So that's our, oops, need to adjust this a little bit, it looks like. Let's try that. I need it to end right around December 1st. Still in November, oh. There we go, that's better. Alright. So I had to make a little bit of adjustment there. You might need to do the same. I would assume that you need to use the same dates as I am here, because evidently December 1st landed on a weekend, and so that's why I didn't pull up that price. So I'm downloading that. I'll pull it up. I'm going to select the adjusted close prices. Actually, let me stop there. I'm going to go ahead and calculate the returns for each period, and then I'm going to move that back over to the other spreadsheet. To calculate the returns, we're going to use a geometric return rather than an arithmetic return. To do that, I'll put in equals ln for the natural log, and we'll take the most recent price on our spreadsheet from 12/3/2012 divided by the previous price, and that gives us a return of negative 0.77% for that month. I'll pull that all the way down. And then I'm going to go out to my other spreadsheet and paste that. So I'll put paste special, values. I'll reformat again to make it look nice. And this is Cracker Barrel. Excuse me, I apologize for the coughing. I've got a little head cold. Hopefully it doesn't come up too loud on the video. Now what I need to do, what's a little bit unique about the Fama French three-factor model is the dependent variable, the left-hand side variable in the regression, is not the return for the firm, it's the excess return for the firm. So I need to take the return for the firm and subtract from that the return for the risk-free rate. So here I'll put excess cbrl, or you can name that whatever you want, and that's going to be equal to the return for the month minus the risk-free rate. Again, in this case, at least for quite a while, that's not a very big amount. We go down for our 5-year period. It looks like Cracker Barrel had a few bad months there and a few good months. So I expect to see quite a bit of volatility here. I can delete the rest of my data. And now we're going to calculate the regression. My dependent variable will be my excess return for Cracker Barrel. My independent variables, my right-hand side variables on the regression, will be the market risk factor, the size risk factor, and the value risk factor. And for this, I'll need to use multivariate regression. So I need to go out to data and data analysis. If you don't have data analysis on yours, you'll need to go to File, and then Options, and Add-ins, and then go to Excel Add-ins, and select the Analysis Toolpack. Okay. So I'm going to go out to Data Analysis, select Regression, my Y input range, and note that I'm also highlighting the title. I'm going to include the title in my my regression outputs. My X input range, so the Y is the dependent variable, the X's are the independent variables. So that's going to include the market return, the market risk factor or market risk premium, the size risk premium, and the value risk premium. I'll highlight all those. I make sure to click labels. It's going to look really weird. Don't include either one of these. You can select anything you want down here. Sometimes you'll see some interesting things. I'll select the residual plots and the line fit plots. And this is what my output looks like. You can see these are the regression coefficients that we calculated for the model. The R-square, and I talked a little bit about this in class, I think, and also on the previous Fama French three-factor model video. The R-square here isn't very high. The model itself only explains about 24% of the variation in the excess return for Cracker Barrel. That's not unheard of for a stock in this model. So what we have so far is a beta, market beta, if you will, of 0.796, a size risk factor of 0.11, so it isn't very sensitive to the risk associated with being a small firm. Cracker Barrel really isn't a very small firm, and it doesn't have much risk associated with being a high or low book-to-market value firm. Alright, so our next step is to calculate the cost of equity using the Fama French three-factor model. In order to do this, we need to know what the market, size, and value risk premiums are. Based on our discussion in class, actually I'll use the correct wording from your textbook. The equity risk premium that I said that I would use is 4.5%. If you go back and look at the other Fama French three-factor model video, I use 5.5%. Again, this is a judgment call. It's up to you if you think one is more appropriate than the other. just say so and explain where you got it. But I'll go ahead and use the one that I talked about in class. The size risk premium, again, I'm using the one from the textbook. It's developed over many years. You might find a different one. Don't use the recent ones from the Kenneth French website. The reason being is those are very short-term calculated risk premiums. They aren't longer term like we talked about in class. We tend to look for longer term ones to eliminate errors due to recent events. The size risk premium is 2%. The value risk premium is 4.3%, and that is available in your textbook. Sorry if that's a little jumpy. I had someone come to the door and had to pause for a minute. So now what we need to do is calculate or find the risk-free rate, and this is a little bit different than what was in the original video that I put out there, because in that video I was using the 10-year treasury bond or treasury note. In this case, to be consistent with what I showed you in class, I'm going to use the yield on the 20-year treasury note. In order to find that, I'm going to go out to treasury.gov. Alright, Resource Center, and to go out to the Data and Chart Center. Again, just like what I showed you in class, the daily Treasury long-term rates. No, I don't want to review your website. And then the most recent one is 2.86. This is a little tricky because if we wanted to be accurate, we would actually use the one from December of 2012, but it should be close enough in our case. As you see, there's not a lot of variation over time. So I'll go back out here. My risk-free rate is 2.86. So I'll put risk-free rate. My beta, if you will, the regression coefficient on the market risk premium. So I'll actually put this as AI, and if you look in your notes, well, I'll just put it as A. If you look in your notes, I label it AI, the regression coefficient on the side, or the market risk factor. That's going to be equal to 0.7969. And then we would add in our equity, or multiply that by our equity risk premium, 4.5%. Then we would take the regression coefficient, put this as RP, then we would take our regression coefficient on the size risk factor, and I labeled that B in class, and then our size risk premium is equal to 2%. And let me just stop briefly and explain what that means. What that means is that for investors that held small firms, they required a 2% greater return on those small firms than they would have for large firms. All right, so you expect a higher return for small firms rather than large firms, and so that's what that size risk premium measures. Finally, our last regression coefficient, C, was for the value factor, value risk factor. Then the value risk premium is equal to 4.3%. So our cost of equity will be equal to the risk-free rate plus the equity risk, the regression coefficient for the equity risk factor multiplied by the equity risk premium plus the regression coefficient for the size risk factor multiplied by the size risk premium plus the regression coefficient for the value risk factor multiplied by the value risk premium. And that can't be right. Let me double check my numbers here. So I get 2.86%. Oh, that's why it's wrong. This should be 0.026286. There we go. And so that gives us a cost of equity for Cracker Barrel of 7.14%. I hope this is helpful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, ask me in class. You'll need to complete this for your project for the class, and I'd encourage you to do this sooner rather than later, just to kind of keep up with the flow of class and so that we can discuss it when it's still relevant. I'll go ahead and probably later on today put out another video on the Pastor-Stambach model, which includes a liquidity risk premium. And I'll see you all on Monday.